John, the big get, Erin Andrews.
And we're going to wrap up the baseball season. We're going to talk everything media, Peacock, Apple, RSNs, and of course, the World Series and Joe Davis.
Kyle Tucker, this time they finish the job. The Houston Astros, world champions.
And we're back. The Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast. I'm Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for the New York Post. He's John Ourand.
Our good buddy there, John Ourand.
The media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. John, the big get, Erin Andrews. That's coming up in a little bit. She was really good going into her whole career. I didn't realize. We'll let you hear it, but she started her career, her big-time career, at one network, not ESPN. I didn't even realize. It's kind of like, to me, like Richie Cunningham having a brother. That's what it was like finding out about this Erin Andrews 2-year spot that with another network that I did research. I didn't even realize it, and I've been following her career forever.
Yeah, I know. I thought she started it on RSN down in Florida. So that's a good interview. But let's get right into it. Who's up? Who's down?
Who's up? Who's down?
Andrew, lead us off.
All right, my who's up, James Brown of CBS Sports, and credit to CBS and the NFL Today, because they directly took on the Kyrie Irving situation, the Kanye West situation, with what's going on with anti-Semitism and hate in this country. Now, they didn't directly say anything about Irving or Kanye, but James Brown had an excellent commentary on Sunday during the NFL Today. And here's just a bit of it.
We all know the championships are overwhelmingly won by those who display teamwork and togetherness. But there is a serious threat to that principle today with the frightening rise in anti-Semitism, in particular, hate in general. And we're seeing that contagion not just in sports, but music, politics, and across society. Folks, hate is a disease. It is a virus that spreads and kills. Now, to cast doubt on or state definitively that the Holocaust did not happen, that's as hurtful and wrong as saying the lynching of black people didn't happen or that being enslaved was a choice.
Now, look, it's very important for people to speak out on these issues, especially when they're respected, like Brown is. And I think, the NFL Today could have looked at that and said, we're not going to do this. This isn't the NFL, and we're in sports. We're not in entertainment. And they didn't. They let James Brown say what he needed to say. And we'll talk about more of this in a little bit. There's really no other side to these issues when you're talking about prejudice, when you talk about racism, when you talk about sexism, when you talk about anti-Semitism and any other type of prejudice. And I thought it was a really good job by CBS, the NFL Today, and James Brown.
I agree. That what could have been my who's up easily. My who's up, though, it's going to Pete Pavakwa, who is the chairman over at the NBC Sports. A story, Andrew, that I think flew under the radar a little bit. We wrote about it in Sports Business Journal. Rick Cordella, who is a digital maven over at NBC. Several years ago, he moved over to Peacock to help build up Peacock, and he worked over at Peacock. Well, just last week, NBC Sports brought him back over. He is president of programming at NBC Sports, and the reason why Pete Pavakwa is my who's up is that this takes Pete Pavakwa's empire at NBC Sports and it starts to expand it over into Peacock. Peacock had operated sort of as its own fiefdom, but now anything sports that's going on Peacock is going through Pavakwa much more directly than it has in the past. In the past, of course, he had some sort of say in it, but this is also showing, Andrew, that every single deal that these legacy media companies make have some sort of streaming component associated with it. So of course they need to have more of a say in what goes on with Peacock. And I think that this move certainly shows that.
I love when you bring up media empires. It's so intriguing for the future. What will Pavakwa do with his media empire now? It's all on his shoulders. They've done some big deals, recently with Sunday Night, of course, and then re-upping the Premier League. wrestling as well with the WWE.
Yeah, and over at NBC Universal now, though, Pete Bavacqua, he was already a big executive over there. It's just he has a bigger power base, and he's much more influential within the halls of
quick
NBC
one,
Universal.
quick one. All right, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Who has the biggest empire? Sean McManus at CBS, Jimmy Pitaro at ESPN, Eric Shanks at Fox, Pete Bavacqua at NBC. You can throw anybody else in there that you want. Who has the biggest empire?
I'm going with Pitaro.
Yeah, I'd probably go Pitaro.
I mean, ESPN and Disney and ESPN has how many linear channels, and ESPN Plus, and I'm going to get a lot of emails off that one, though. So thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I agreed. The Empire Strikes Back. The ESPN's the evil empire. So there you go. All right.
Well, now that I'm in trouble with Fox, CBS, and NBC, Andrew, why don't you go with who's down?
My who's down is Jeff Bezos and Amazon. It's been utterly pathetic to watch how Amazon has handled the documentary that Kyrie Irving promoted that was on their platform. Just for people who don't know, Irving's been suspended after tweeting out a link to a documentary that, among other things, claims the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews died, did not happen. And Irving probably, if he had just apologized right away, said he was wrong, could still be playing. Instead, he was hesitant to apologize and never really went fully into saying he's sorry until after he was suspended. Now he's going to be suspended at least 5 games until there's a checklist that he has to complete. If he ever does that, he could come back. Knowing Kyrie, I'm not sure that will happen. Meanwhile, though, and let me just say this, and Kyrie deserves everything he's getting for this, but he just tweeted it. He had no comments. So just understand that when I say this. This is on Amazon Prime Video's platform. They've been completely silent on it. I sent message after message to them to try to understand their stance on this. They don't respond to that. I even asked who was in charge of selling anti-Semitic documentaries, if I could speak to that person. And so Jeff Bezos has a deal with the NBA already. They're doing games in Brazil, among other things. In a couple of years, Amazon very likely could be getting NBA games here in the United States. Jeff Bezos reportedly wants to buy the Washington football team, the Commanders. These are fair questions. Why do you have this on? Amazon is not a mom and pop shop. And I get it. These questions about what you are going to publish and what you aren't, they're very tricky because some things are balls and strikes. Where you're making calls about certain issues that a fair-minded person might look at things differently. This is not one of those cases. And Amazon's silence, especially when you look how Kyrie has been treated, is, to me, embarrassing and pathetic. And I get it, they're a difficult spot, but this is a company that has a market that's close to $1 trillion. They have the money to do this. They can't just wash their hands and say, oh, we just publish stuff and we have nothing to do with it. They're a brand that is known for being able to distribute products better than anybody maybe in history. It's an amazing brand. I like what they're doing in sports. This, to me, is embarrassing because not only are they giving light to this type of thought, but they can distribute ideas as well as products just as easily, because just as a click of a button, and we've seen it after the Kyrie tweet, people can have access to this. And what the internet does, it allows people to form groups much more easily. And that means hate groups can form much more easily. And this is why Kyrie was so irresponsible. But Amazon is also irresponsible, and they also need to do something. Now, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, and I do think things were kind of in motion, even though Amazon doesn't really have any statements or anything. Maybe they're going to change their stance on it. And I get it. Some of the stuff can be a slippery slope, but it's pathetic and embarrassing from Amazon.
Andrew, we have this on our list of topics for later in the show, but let's just get to it now. Please go to the NewYorkPost.com. Andrew wrote a great editorial on this that's really worth reading. Really nice job on that. If Amazon does end up taking that movie down, what took them so long? I mean, it's been, I don't even know how long it's been up, but it's been up for a full week since this has been a controversy that's been going. And all of these companies, you're seeing it with Elon Musk and Twitter. You're seeing it with Amazon. I mean, you're seeing it with every social media company that just wants to have sort of free speech, which is, what newspapers all did. And there has to be some sort of editorial qualities, or editorial assurances, to where these types of movies are just outright lies. The Holocaust happened. To say it didn't happen and then to promote it on your own platforms, it's just irresponsible, and it's especially irresponsible for a company that's worth $3 trillion.
Exactly. And here's the thing. First off, let me credit Jay Williams, who, said this initially on ESPN, shortly after all this happened. So he deserves some credit for having that opinion very quickly. It was a fair point. And I kind of waited, like, maybe they're going to do something. Like, let's see, are they going to do something? Giving them a little time. And then they still hadn't, a week later, where they're still kind of dragging their feet. This isn't all sides. And here's the thing. So, and I had this discussion with one of my editors about it. So in theory, you could have these types of books or documentaries out there, right? In a non-digital world, because back then, if John Ourand, wanted to check this out, it took a lot of effort to get it, right? You'd have to find who had it. Is it in a bookstore? Is it a documentary? Is it a library, right? Access to it. Now, and this is the beauty of Amazon for a lot of things, getting paper towels and everything else that you want is just at a one click away. Now it's so easy for anybody in the world to buy this documentary. And Kyrie has made it so more people knew about it, but it's on Amazon's platform. And when you do that, it spreads hate, right? And it's not just this issue, it's for any issue. And so that's number one. Number two, let's talk about the business aspect of it for Amazon. These platforms, it needs to be a higher level for Amazon, as opposed to some other like just website or chat room that's just sort of out there, where it doesn't have as many people going to it and it doesn't have as big a forum. Now they could argue, well, nobody really knew about this until Kyrie Irving was promoted it and it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, but the problem is, if you are presenting yourself as a store, a digital store, you're selling this. Like, imagine going in to Barnes and Nobles and they had this documentary out there, or sold it. There's a section. This is, a Holocaust denying section. Would that be okay? I don't think how anybody, Jeff Bezos, Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, how anybody would say that's okay. And I get it. They want to avoid calling balls and strikes, because then you get into different issues that aren't as cut and dry perhaps as the Holocaust happening or not. But sorry, that's what happens when you're $1 trillion company, and that's the responsibility that comes with it. And you can't do this like Netflix. You can't just put something on Netflix and they sell it there. And I get it. There's another way to make money, and I'm sure most of the films and documentaries are fine, but you have to vet them. They claim, at least in, again, they didn't respond to my messages, plural with an S. They didn't respond. They did it. There's a story in the Times where they didn't really respond, but they seemed to have worked with the reporter there, where, it's implied that there was some sort of vetting system, or there's some AI. This is not AI. You're talking about hate. And I can't go as crazy like, well, people die because of this, perhaps, but it's not helping society in the least. And they have a responsibility. And this is the same thing with Elon Musk and Twitter. I think he thinks he can control things. I'm not as opposed to, if you think about it, payment could, the thing he needs to do, in my opinion, if I'm Elon Musk, if you're listening here, you need to have some sort of verification for everybody. And even if there's a payment along with it, where you're actually the person and you have to put your name to it. And if that happens, then you can't just say whatever you want. And then the bots who are, monkey ears 679, that person, that will have no value, right? And that won't show up. Then maybe you have something there in terms of that. And I think that's where we need the lack of, identity of people. They need to try to figure that out for Twitter to survive and to thrive and to grow and become better.
Andrew, my first job in the business was back in 1990, writing for the Montgomery County Gazette, which ended up getting bought by the Washington Post. I was working. I've been working for newspapers and then went into sort of trade publishing from there. Going back to 1990, you're now with a traditional newspaper, and your whole career has been spent in journalism. We have seen the internet come in and digital come in and totally disrupt our business. I think that one of the things that I'm seeing with Elon Musk and what he's doing on Twitter is sort of stuff that I have been seeing in every newsroom I've been in going back to 1990, which is, okay, let's build a paywall. Let's get that toothpaste back in the tube. Let's let's verify users and he's trying to throw these things against the wall. I love Twitter. I'm active on Twitter. I enjoy reading tweets and I enjoy tweeting. I'm not leaving Twitter. I'm hopeful that he figures out a solution to where it remains it's basically my personalized news feed. And I'm hoping he something happens. My worry is I've seen this before, and I've seen this before over 30 years, and it's not necessarily pretty.
No, he's also slashed half just like newspapers. He slashed.
Just like newspapers. Yeah, we got to cut staff. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. All right. We did that because it was such an awkward transition. If we just went to who's down, but now we, from kind of a serious subject, when you're talking about anti-Semitism and Amazon and all that. But let's go back to where we were, because they're still important. Every week we got a who's up, who's down, John. So as we move into baseball, which we're going to talk to as our first official topic, give us your who's down.
Well, my who's down, I am going back to the RSN this time it's not Chris Ripley and Sinclair. It's going to be Crane Kenny, who is the president of the Cubs, who launched, get this timing, Andrew, the Cubs launched their regional sports network, Marquee Sports Network, in February of 2020. So they were already taking a leap because of cord cutting, getting rid of subscribers, and they ended up launching a month before the pandemic hit. Chicago Tribune's Robert Chanik had a good story on Marquee's problems this week. He wrote, quote, "Things haven't gone exactly as planned," which I think is a bit of an understatement. The team has been, since the launch, the team has been awful on the field. Believe me, as an Oriole fan, I know awful on the field. And viewership is down 56%. Chanik quotes Crane Kenny as saying that, quote, "We launched into a headwind. The Cubs are looking," it's like Elon Musk, they're looking at everything. Like, how can we start to get the money back? The likelihood is they're going to have some sort of streaming service, a direct-to-consumer service coming next year at some point. Marquee Sports Network, to me, is a perfect example of the problems that RSNs are having in the current market, and there are no easy answers for the Cubs, Marquee, or Crane Kenny, who is my who's down.
Yeah, and that brings us right into our first topic, which is going over the whole baseball season, from the World Series with Joe Davis making his debut in place of Joe Buck on that big stage, and then Apple, Peacock, Amazon with the Yankees on Friday night, and the RSN Future. Let's start with the World Series. Joe Davis. In my newsletter on Mondays, I did a full review of Joe Davis. In my newsletter in New York Post Sports Plus, every Monday morning, you can get that. I gave Joe a 4.1 out of 5 clickers, which is an excellent score for a debut. Biggest reason why, the big calls. He nailed them. He has a great ability of saying few words, but saying something and putting a headline and kind of telling that story. That's a skill that he's really shown at a young age, only 34, but it's a big job, so he should be able to do this. For propensity to hit those words. At the end of this podcast, our call of the week, maybe the best bit of television of this year, in Game 3 with Bryce Harper hitting a home run and the Fox just hitting it out of the park themselves. So Joe Davis, here's the thing. You don't want to be the story your first World Series. Joe Davis was not the story. Again, you go on Twitter, you'll find people who loved him. You'll find people who didn't like him. Some people want Joe Buck back. Other people are happy Joe Davis is there. Whatever, you can find it. But it's not the theme. We're not going out of that. Do I think Adam Amin and Jason Benetti could have done this job as well, if not better? Maybe. I'm not really ready to say Joe Davis is the best guy, but that said, that sounds like I'm being negative. I'm not. Like, high marks for Joe Davis. He did a very good job. He hit the big calls. Innings 2 through 8. Smoltz is a little bit of the issue there. He's very much, I had a Twitter follower give a great summary of Smoltz. His name's Sal Laban on Twitter. He said that with people who don't like Smoltz, he's an analyst. They're looking for a color commentator. And I think that's a very good point. He analyzes every pitch and it's kind of dry. And so, Davis is a little bit more on the dry side. So you don't really have the big, usually like Summerall, Madden, you had the, very dry Summerall and Madden with the big personality. And that kind of what really works, the yin and yang there.
You gave a 4.1. I'm an easier grader than you. I gave a 4.5. And part of it is I've been doing the pod with you for a little more than a year now, Andrew. And what is it that you always say? You don't want to go into a party and immediately be like, this real big joke, big personality. I've heard Joe Davis call local games for the Dodgers, and he has a sense of humor. And you couldn't see that at all during the World Series, because he kind of came in. This was his intro really to a big national baseball audience. He met Smoltz. He didn't sort of overshadow Smoltz, and it certainly wasn't under Smoltz. And he had what I thought was a really professional debut, which is why I rated him higher. I'm sure as the years go on, he's that sense of humor is going to come out. That personality, you couldn't really get a sense of his personality, I think, during the World Series. He was calling it. And for my money, you said this already, he met every single big call on the World Series. And if I'm Joe Davis, I'm plenty happy with that start.
All right, let's review the rest of the baseball season and look forward. Okay, kind of goes into each other. Let's first look back. All right, you had the Apple deal, Friday night doubleheaders with some crews, 3-person crews they started out with. And then they pared down a little bit with some of them. And then you had Peacock Sunday. They had Benetti as their lead play-by-player, and then took analysts from each of the teams. And then Amazon on Friday nights became a big deal, especially around Aaron Judge and Apple with the Friday night games that they had with the Yankees, and Apple having the Judge game. You want to do grades? You willing to do grades here or no?
I don't know if I'm going to do grades because they're different perspectives for
no,
each.
not overall grade. I'm saying each one.
No, I know they're different, but like so.
All right,
so
fine. What's your thought?
Look,
let me make it
all right. So I just
thoughts?
know this because I've been talking to you now for a year. You hate Apple, and you hate Apple's Friday night. I think that Apple achieved pretty close to what baseball wanted. It provided games to a new audience of potential cord cutters that didn't have access to the games. It was how many times were the Yankees on there? Twice, maybe.
And I
maybe
think
once,
two or at least
no.
two, probably 3.
Well, okay, 2. So you were able, as a Yankee fan in New York, you're able to see 160 Yankee games. If you have to go and take a look at Apple TV Plus, where it was available for free. And
all right, John, I don't want to do this. I just talked a lot, but I have to challenge here. How many people watch those games?
We have no idea. We don't know.
Okay. I've heard the numbers. Right? I've heard the numbers, but not enough to go with. That said, we're both pretty
certain that the number is low. Yeah.
Okay, so we can't say they reached a new audience when we don't know what that audience is. It was available to a new audience in a different way, but we don't know how many people actually watched. On the surface, a doubleheader with local teams playing in every other market on Fridays makes 0 sense in terms of getting a big audience, correct? You're not going to get anybody out of market. Friday night, Phillies, Orioles, you're getting Phillies fans and Orioles fans, and a lot of people probably passing because it's too much of a hassle. Again, I'm not saying baseball shouldn't do this. I'm not saying that you don't have to start this way and you need the friction to make it work. If there's no friction and if it's on your RSN, nobody's going to check it out. They tried that sometimes. It doesn't work because people just watch it on their local RSN and then, oh, great, it's on a new service. So you do need that friction. Look, the broadcast booth we've gone over, that was an issue. right? I don't want to beat a dead horse on that one, but that was an issue. I'm sure that's going to change for next year in some regards.
But I don't know how much. I'm not so sure it's going to change. I think it's going to change, but I don't think we're going to see a traditional baseball telecast on Apple. I do think that they want to cater to something a little bit different. And I think for a guy that used to be a beat reporter and is a big baseball fan, you're going to hate it no matter
But that goes
almost
to the
certainly.
fundamental. Okay, I don't know. We've talked about this, but that goes to the fundamental, like, of who is actually going to watch this. Your premise was like they're going to find new people. My premise would be actually it's the opposite when you talk about streaming services,
My premise
because you
was
have
they're
to
going to
find it. You have to find it. It
my
doesn't
premise
find you.
was that they were.
Cable TV, when you're flipping around, you find it. This you have to find. Now, granted, Apple, I don't know. I got to learn how to take this off my phone. They're always popping up, and every game's close. You watch this game, that game, and I guess that's the plan with MLS, maybe for next year. But like, I don't know. It doesn't really. It's like, okay, that's good to know. And every
No,
once in a while,
look, my,
maybe I'll
my,
go turn
my
something on.
premise on Apple is that it was an acceptable test for 1 out of 162 games, or potentially 2 out of 162 games, and that it's good for baseball to be in business with Apple on a live series, considering where the whole market is going.
All right, Peacock. What did you think of that?
I know that baseball. I only watched Peacock once when the Orioles happened to be on it. Um, I know that baseball really liked the idea of a new window that they can get that they can get games in, especially on Sunday morning. One of the things we had Rob Manfred. I interviewed at the World Congress the other week, and he just talked about, like, Sunday is getaway day, and just having those games end earlier is easier on the players. The players like them. The fans, I don't know if the fans like them. We haven't seen viewership figures over for Peacock as well, but they really did like the new window, the production where they used, RSN talent from the different markets fits in more. I mean, I'm also a big baseball fan, so it fits in more with how we like to watch. So we certainly like the production more than Apple, but it was sort of like an NBC Sports production. So I know that baseball liked it, and they want to continue that.
If you look at the Bavacqua Empire, that window, they've had success with soccer, and I think it was good. That's the one I like. I like the deal and how that was put together. That was really smart. I thought that was something where they thought outside the box, and they really got to a place where, again, I don't know, that probably didn't do huge numbers either, but just speaking from someone who's really been close to baseball, as someone who's covered it for a long time, but besides media, it does make some sense, especially if you have a day game Saturday. And I could see the players really liking that. That's a good point about them really enjoying the getaway days, because they hate Sunday night baseball because of that issue, right? You're late, and then if you have to travel someplace, it's a real problem because you're getting to the next city, no matter if it's a charter, but you're getting to the next city at best at 4 a.m, maybe 3, sometimes 5 if you go West Coast. So that causes all kinds of problems.
One other thing about this, Andrew, is that look at the RSNs and look at the ratings and look at like the cord cutting. It's not a healthy business right now, and this is baseball doing things differently to try to like seed Apple TV Plus and seed Peacock, and so I applaud them for that. You're in the New York market. I didn't see a lot of this. I didn't see any of it, actually, but a lot of Yankee games were on Amazon. How did that work out?
Yeah, so if you generally Friday night, when I had that story, I wrote that story before the season, people went crazy about the fact that Friday night games are going to be on Amazon. Look, I like what Amazon did with this because it's the Yankees, right? Top franchise in baseball. It's local, it's sticky. And can they, the question I have, and I've asked people at Amazon this, and I think they will try to do, is can you recreate that in other big markets, right? Do you try to do that? I don't want to just throw out names because I'd have to see what the ownerships are, exactly who owns what, but can you do it in other big markets? And is that another way to help their prime business? This is the difference, like, to me, between what Apple did and what Amazon did. When you give friction, yes, people are gonna be annoyed at first, but then you have to give value. And I think with the Apple deal in comparison is that you give the friction, and like you said, it's only 2 or 3 games. So then you just annoy people, but they don't get long-term. They're not going to use the service long-term because of this. Amazon, if you're in New York and you want to watch all the Yankee games, you're going to need the service on Fridays. It's going to become a part of your repertoire. I feel like I said repertoire there. I was like very quick on that repertoire because I thought I'd mess it up. Anyways, the Friday night game. So I think there's value there. So that made sense to me. And I think long term, if people do go direct to consumer, if you're the Yankees, what they're doing smartly is that you've kind of created this. So is there a day where Amazon is just where you find your Yankees and you start with 21 games and you add a little bit more over time? Yes, isn't going anywhere. Yes, it's super successful, making a lot of money. And I think, of all the regional sports networks, it might be the one that's best positioned, but I think what they've done, all 3 of those, it's very smart.
Andrew, you had an interesting story about Netflix and sports in the Post. I wrote about Netflix. They kicked the tires a little bit, not a serious bid, but they kicked the tires on Formula One. They of course have the Formula One documentary Drive to Survive that's been popular, and you had them also kicking the tires on the WTA, the Tennis Association. What went on with that?
Yeah, international rights. I think the negotiations went pretty deep, and then ultimately Netflix decided not to do it. So I think when we talk about Netflix, I think maybe 5-6 years ago, people would mention Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and Netflix would be put in there. And it was like kind of, if we were doing a podcast, I think we would have been saying this doesn't make sense for them. They have no advertising. Well, now they've added advertising. And you see where the business is going. You need advertising if you're going to do sports, right? There's just too many windows that you need to, where commercials need to go. So I think as that business matures, I think Netflix could look at it. And I do believe that, most experts are Michael Nathansons of the world, even though I'm mentioning him, even though I'm not sure he said this, but the experts out there who study this stuff, think that there will be 3 or 4 streaming platforms that most families will be willing to have, right? On average. Obviously, it'll change from person to person and family to family and home to home. But when you get to 3 or 4, sports could be a deciding factor. And Netflix is the only one that doesn't have live sports, right? Disney Plus with ESPN Plus, and like we've talked about, the mothership will eventually go streaming. Amazon, HBO Max is going to have sports eventually. You shortchanged them last week, that our guy Nate Smeltz, the head there, gave you a little call because you just kind of disregarded HBO Max. You want to address that?
Yeah, Nate Smeltz told you that he called me to disagree?
Yes, of course.
Oh, come on, Nate. That was a personal conversation there.
No, well, he just told me. No, he wanted to give me. Hold on a second. On behalf of the podcast, he's doing his job, giving me an FYI just for your information.
That's good. That's
for the future, good. That we got a little thing called HBO Max that that's broadening, and they got Discovery.
In Nate's defense, I never told him that our call was off the record. So in his defense, he was totally legit.
It looked like it was like this is my phone call to John and repeating. He was actually, hold on a second. He was actually just telling me that, giving me the insight, and I go, take it up with Ourand. All right. I need to put I told him I need to put at the beginning of this podcast that, these are only my thoughts. I'm not responsible for John's thoughts.
Nate was legitimately upset. He wasn't upset even. He legitimately pointed out, hey, when I dissed Turner for its cord cutting and all these cable channels, I disregarded HBO Max. I disregarded Discovery Plus, and I disregarded especially Bleacher, which is really young. So they have a big streaming service. Of course, I was talking about a broadcaster, which is, of course, a mass medium. But I totally take Nate at his word on that. Here's a problem that I have with Netflix getting into sports, and stop me if you've heard this before. It's the same problem that I have with Amazon getting into sports, and it's the same problem I have with Apple getting into sports. Is I don't see where sports makes them money. I can understand that they want the sports rights, but you have these established media companies that are bidding them up. I mean, this is the United States, more than any international market, is a totally mature market where sports rights cost a lot, and it takes a lot to make money off of it. And so if I was a sports league, I would still be the money's there, so I would go after it. But I would still be a little bit concerned that, once I go to Amazon, once Amazon and Apple and Netflix rule the sports world, then all the leverage turns to those big, deep-pocketed tech companies, and you're not going to come back to these, these cable companies or cable networks that today have a lot of money to build up the rights. So it's a delicate dance that they have to do right now when it comes to that.
All right, let's finish up before we get to Erin Andrews with this, and this kind of leads into what you just said. You look at the NFL and what they did. The NFL, nothing's really going to change over the next decade, right? Except for the Amazon Thursday night. We're going to be watching the NFL basically the same way. We'll be able to watch it the same way a decade from now if they don't opt out the NFL. And then you look at our last topic, and we'll go quickly before we get to Erin. The MLS and Apple starts. MLS Cup was a banger, which means, John, for soccer is like a great game. As we got the World Cup, I gotta get your terms down.
Yeah. In football, I think a banger is a sausage, banger and mash, right?
Well, I play on a soccer team. Actually, I don't know if I should say this. I play on a soccer team, and one of my teammates the other day said to me, I want a banger. I said, excuse me? And he just brought his girlfriend last week to the game. And he meant for me, a banger is like a great shot, to score like a great shot and a banger. All right. But that's what he said. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like this 28-year-old guy. Right. And I was like, all right, well, that was a little much there. But he meant he wanted a banger from me to score. And then and then this is the moral of the story. And this is the only reason I said this. I scored.
Hey, do we have video? Do we have video of that? I had that one video.
It actually is video. There. I could actually there is video in this indoor soccer place, so maybe I can rustle that up. All right, last thing.
I have a couple of questions. Is the guy British?
No, he's not. No,
he's American. You can't use that term as an American. Come on.
Oh, you can. No. Well, we'll find out if you can. We'll find out the day after Thanksgiving when England plays the U.S. if we're allowed to use the term or not. We can get a point from that game on Fox. There you go, guys. Andrew Fergusi, Eric Shanks and company. Give you a little plug there. This will help your ratings. If that game, we get a point out of there, either a draw or we get a W, then we can say whatever we want forever. Listen, don't even get me started about that stuff. Last thing, we need to get on air. All right, I know I sidetracked. MLS Cup, great game. Now goes to Apple. In your mind, it goes into Netherlands. We never hear from the MLS again, or this is going to work. You got a decade of soccer on Apple.
A lot of my best sources think it's potentially a disastrous deal for MLS. I love the deal for MLS. I love everything about it. MLS has not been a good TV sport since we're going on more 25 years now. This is a way to get MLS. It's with Apple. MLS's fans are young. They're tech savvy. They're maybe this will be the jump start that they need in order to really build a fan base and get that going. I think that the risk value of MLS doing this deal is very low. The money was bigger than they were going to get from linear TV, and I think it's a great deal.
All right, fine. John, joining us now, the big get, Erin Andrews. Erin is the lead sideline reporter on Fox Sports' top NFL game each week. She has a podcast, Calm Down with Erin and Carissa, with Fox and Amazon's Carissa Thompson. And she has her own clothing line, Wear by Erin Andrews. Erin, first off, thanks for joining us. And here's a little known fact that I don't think a lot of the listeners know, and you might not know this either.
Oh, God.
John also has his own clothing line.
Called? What is it called, John? Come on.
Well, you know what? There's a common mistake. I am wearing a Johnny O shirt, but there's no relation, Andrew, to the Johnny O. Absolutely not.
No.
We got to make this happen, guys. Come on.
Actually, Erin, you were way ahead of the curve, though, in terms of having your own clothing line. Now that's kind of the thing to do, right? Brady has his own. Jeter has his own clothing line. You kind of were, a little before the trend was really hit its stride.
Yeah, I mean, Brady and Jeter followers, obviously. I mean, come on, guys. No, well, Strahan kind of started this out, but I just, noticed after 8 years on College Game Day and obviously being a fan, going to school in the SEC, knowing how that's basically a religion out there, and then, marrying a hockey player, having to go into pro shops and dress up for games and stuff like that. There was just a huge white space. I'm a big Tom girl or tomboy, and I just kind of felt like what was available was great for a certain audience, but I'm not really like a pink it, shrink it, bedazzle kind of gal, despite all those years on Dancing with the Stars and everything. So I like I said, tomboy. I like a jean jacket, a bomber, like stuff you can wear how about this, guys? You'll throw up in your mouth. Everywhere, anywhere. You don't have to just be at the stadium. You can be going to vote today. You can be running around town. And even though you're, pulling for the Detroit Lions after a huge win this past weekend, people aren't like, whoa, super fan. They're like, wow, that's actually pretty stylish. So all those years on College Game Day, all those years in Gainesville, Florida, and being a wife of a hockey player, I was like, there's got to be something we can do here to make people look fashionable and also cheer for their team at the same time.
Everywhere, anywhere.
What a spin, huh?
Yeah, very good.
Totally
I just wanted you to make a joke about John's style, and we got the whole thing. We know
everything
everything
into
about
a pitch.
EA.
Yeah, I'm trained right. I'm trained well. I do.
How many years have you had that, though? I am curious about that.
So we started in 2019 and kicked some ass. We got thrown into the deep end. We teamed up with Fanatics. Michael Rubin's been a major help with all of this. And then, 2020 tried it out in the middle of a pandemic, but thank God we had sports. Thank God fans needed a break from everything that was going on in the world. And now at year 4, we have all the major leagues. We just got Major League Baseball in time for the playoffs, and that's been really awesome. So yeah, I definitely didn't get an education at this going to Florida, learning about how to deal with all this stuff. I've been told a lot by my partners in this industry to relax, calm down, be patient, because I want to go, go, go. But it's been awesome. It's been a really, really cool learning experience.
Everywhere, anywhere. That's kind of like what my clothing brand would be, but with a little more wrinkles, I think.
Yeah.
Erin, I love getting people like you
all the time. That's what I think about the airline. We got to figure out how to work that. I'm writing it down.
Perfect. I'll look for your email. I love getting people like you. You're so established on TV now. What was your first big break? How did that happen?
Gosh, I mean, I think my first big break, well, obviously I'm thankful because I started in the industry with Turner Sports. I absolutely was horrific on Turner. Actually just saw Kenny Smith, Kenny the Jet, and at the Rams 49ers game, and I was thinking about that time. They signed me. They saw me as a Tampa Bay Lightning ringside reporter, gave me a big shot. 2-year deal with TBS at Turner Sports. I was horrific. I basically felt like at the time, my dad is, retired now, but Emmy-winning investigative reporter with NBC, and he's just a fantastic writer, something I'll never be like him. But when I got the job with Turner, it was for Atlanta Braves coverage. That's when they were national with Skip and Joe. And they threw me up on that set, and I was horrific. I was awful. I remember going home every night, calling my dad from Atlanta, just saying, I'm a joke. I shouldn't have this gig. And my dad's like, we'll work through it. We'll work through it. They didn't renew my contract. I remember Charles Barkley telling the bosses at TBS, you guys are going to regret this. You put her in the wrong role. And then I was kind of looking for a job, and ESPN was in town because that's when ESPN had hockey coverage. I know they do now, but that's when they originally had it. And I went to a bar where I knew all the broadcasters were going to be for the Atlanta Thrashers game. And I kind of sold myself and I said, hey, I have a feeling Turner's not going to ask me back. I cut my teeth in the NHL. I'm a diehard sports fan. Who do I go to for a job? And I had a meeting 3 days later with the head of the NHL at ESPN, and Todd Bertuzzi had just smashed that player's head into the ice, and I started going off about it on the call, and he's like, when can you start? I got put on the Western Conference of the NHL Finals. The team that hired me, the Tampa Bay Lightning, ended up winning it in 2004, and I was on the on center ice interviewing the head coach, and Marty St. Louis, now the Montreal Canadiens coach, and that was kind of my big break. That was The next day, they were offering me a 3-year deal with ESPN. And I remember saying, I know you're asking me to do college football, but I really love the NHL. Can I keep doing that? And they're like, we're offering you Saturday night football. So that was kind of it.
I'm curious, when you say you were terrible with Turner, what made you terrible?
I was awful. I was horrific. I didn't know baseball at all to be hosting a desk. I didn't have the tools to host at that time. I didn't have the confidence. It was a situation where I was working as a ringside reporter. TBS saw me and they offered me this deal. I went and I tried out, and my dad was I didn't even have an agent. My dad was my agent. He just said, this is national coming to call. Opportunities don't come around like this. Let's go take it. It was baptism under fire. I admittedly say I was horrific. I was mispronouncing names. I wasn't keeping up with the highlight. I think I called, God love him, Skip Simpson, Joe Carey one day. It was just awful. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It was just bad. And I appreciate Turner giving me the chance. It obviously led me down a different path. I've always loved Charles Barkley for being in my corner, but they were right to move on from me.
And then once it's bad, it's a big ball of momentum that's going. And of course, like college football, your career takes off.
Yeah.
And you end up making the move over to Fox. And I'm not sure if this is a question about what's the difference between Fox and ESPN, or whether it's a question about what's the difference between college football and the NFL. But what was the difference when you moved from being such a star at ESPN over to being, on the Fox's #1 NFL broadcast crew?
Well, I knew I was never going to get Monday Night Football. That role was just never offered to me. And as I talked to a lot of people, actually, I forgot who I was just mentioning with this. I called Coach K because I was working college basketball, 3 times a week. I called Chip Kelly because I had done a ton of Oregon games and I was really tight with him. I called Dan Patrick. Called Mark Shapiro, who had hired me at ESPN. And I just said, what's next? I have this opportunity at Fox. The NFL seems glamorous, cool. It's something I haven't done. And I remember Coach K saying to me, how many Alabama LSU games are you going to do? When is it time for you to move on? And I remember calling Chip Kelly the night it was announced that I was leaving ESPN, and I hadn't told anyone about it. I remember, my closest friends there were Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler, Mike Tirico, who had then moved on. I was doing, you guys, Thursday Night Football. Mike Tirico, Kirk Herbstreit, myself, we were dying about it. We did the Orange Bowl. We did it with Bobby Bowden, Joe Paterno, Penn State. I think it went into 3 overtimes. That was our Thursday night crew at one point. That was insane. But yeah, I remember calling Chip Kelly that night. It had been announced. And I was just bawling. And I was like, I don't know if I made the right decision. I hope I don't regret this. And he's like, don't look back, just look forward. You have to just keep looking forward. And it was absolutely the right decision for me. I am so grateful of my time at ESPN. I really feel like it helped mold me, show me a lot of things. I grew up over there a lot. Just listening to Mike McCarthy talk about how much he grew up in Green Bay, I felt that way about ESPN, but it was time. And I think the timing was so right for me as well.
And when you're back with TBS, or Turner and TBS and the Braves, that's kind of like, to me, John, that's kind of like Richie Cunningham's brother when it comes to Aaron's career. Actually, first of all, I followed closely, I think, and I did research before this interview.
You probably beat me to crap in your articles too, and I deserved it. I'm like, who is this guy? Are you insane? I ruined TBS. Like, I ruined the Super Bowl that year,
What year was it?
Which part? When I was with the Braves?
When you were with the Braves, yeah.
God. Well, you did your research.
I don't know. No, that's what I'm saying. That's not even in your anywhere. I didn't even realize that. So that's interesting to me. Here's
so bad.
Let's just get into the business of sideline reporting.
Okay.
What is it about sideline reporting that you wish people understood, or they don't realize that the people on the sideline that they do that we just don't notice? That what would you want them to know?
Well, I think a couple of things, and I think the role has evolved for me personally. It's for me not about reading articles people write and then spitting them back up on air. I get really sensitive about that. I get sensitive if we're on a Zoom with Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Dak Prescott and they tell us a story that they've already told the media. I want the stuff nobody else knows. And I think a huge part of our job is I got to get the stuff that's happening down on the field, down in the huddles that Kevin and Greg cannot see. I get off on that. I think I am a spy. I do. I really think I work for the CIA. And There's things you have to be careful about, especially with the NFL versus the versus college football, because college football, college basketball, I mean, I'd be in huddles with Izzo and Calipari, and they would say stuff, and I was like, oh my God. And you could repeat it, but in the NFL, you cannot, and you will get reprimanded for that. So I like to think the biggest thing I offer is the stuff on the sidelines, the stuff Kevin and Greg can't see. The other day when Erin goes and grabs the phone and gets on the phone, we've never seen him do that. And I said to Richie Zions and Rich Russo, our director, Erin's on the phone. I don't know who he's talking to, but he is on the phone. I've never seen him on the phone before. And then I ran to kind of a person that I'm close with on the Packers staff. I'm like, who the hell is he talking to? Well, then we found out Stanovich was upstairs for the first time. So we didn't know that. We hadn't been told that. That was something I got to Greg and Kevin. And a lot of this stuff, and I don't mind it. I tell those guys in break, or, tell Richie Zions to tell those guys, and they go with it. I don't need the credit for it. That's not why I'm there. The other thing I think people don't really understand about a sideline reporter is if you are good and you have the connections, you will get a lot of shit down there. And there are teams that trust the hell out of me that will give me a lot of stuff. Packers, Cowboys, 49ers, just teams I've been around. And you have access to a lot of things a lot of other people don't. So a lot of it is about making those connections, having the trust with the athletes, the coaches, the general managers, the training staff, and really just knowing the personnel and what's going on. There's so many little things that'll tip you up that shit's bad. You'll see one of the head guys get a, thing like this, and it's like, uh-oh, something's happening. He just got word somebody's hurt. You follow him, or follow that guy when he gets ready to go talk to Matt LaFleur or Mike McCarthy. You saw week 1, Mike McCarthy, the trainer goes right up to him and he says, are you effing kidding me? Well, he was telling him about Dak's thumb. It's just shit like that. You can tip off our director, our producer really quick so they have the shot.
And what can you give us an example of when the NFL, when you've maybe went a little too far, maybe you don't do this anymore, but early in your career where you kind of got in trouble?
I haven't, thank God.
Oh, okay, never got in trouble. So the line.
Oh my God, why are we even putting that out into the universe? No, I haven't. But I have heard examples.
Did you just knock wood, Erin? Is that what I saw?
I'm the most superstitious person. These athletes, they rub off on me. But no, I have not. And that is something, I get chest pains over. The other day, there was a report I gave on air. And before I gave it on air, look, there's a lot of stuff these coaches, these players tell us. And 90% of it we can't use. And you walk away from these calls and you're like, what the hell did you just get? I can't even use half of this. So there was a moment that was perfect with something that was told to us. And in the break, I said to Kevin and to Greg, do you think so-and-so is going to be pissed? And they were like, absolutely not. And I even after I did it, I texted PR and I just said, that was okay, right? That wasn't off limits. And he was like, it's fine. And then even after the game, I followed up and I'm like, you good? And he's like, it's the least of my problems right now. I'm like, okay, great. But no, thankfully, nothing yet to piss off the NFL. The one thing I did learn is I think I wore a North Face rain jacket, and just like that, New York called and said, put a piece of tape over that North Face. That's not a sponsor. So smart.
Can you wear EA stuff?
I can wear EA stuff because I've got the NFL shield, thankfully.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that. I appreciated when you said that you've gained the trust of a lot of players. That's basically how reporters do their jobs. They get out there, they gain trust, but there's always a point where you sort of overstep that trust. When has that happened to you, and what have you done to sort of mollify that?
I would never want the job of an Adam Schefter. I would never want the job of a Jake Glazer. I would have just feelings of having a stroke all the time. You listen, I'm able to have the access because these guys trust me. I don't know, maybe some of them, I've had a few, well, there's been a couple of times you just worry, you don't want them to think I violated any sort of trust that we have. I remember I was doing a walkout with Doug Peterson, and I know those coaches hate it. They absolutely, it's the worst time to get them. If you're winning or if you're losing, they're like, shit, just let me get in the locker room. Let me look at these stats. I do not want to tell this girl what the hell I'm thinking because they don't want me to repeat it anyways. I remember we were doing, maybe it was a preseason game. Maybe it was an early season game with Doug Peterson. Nick Foles just was not playing well. And he saw me writing, and I was walking and writing, and I wrote word for word what he said. And a lot of these guys, they know if they don't want it, they'll say, hey, not for air. And also you have the wherewithal sometimes to be like, I probably wouldn't like that. He saw me writing it. I reported it. I remember that week I was watching ESPN and Susie Colbert had him on live and she said, Erin Andrews reported you said this, and I died. I was like, oh my God. And I followed up. I followed up to coach. I followed up to Eagles PR. I just said, I hope he saw me writing. I asked my dad. My dad's been in this industry a long time. And my dad said, Erin, if he had had a problem, you would have known. So I think it's things like that. I just don't want these people to think I violated or take advantage of their trust or what the information they give us.
Erin, we've been doing this pod for a little more than a year, and we've had.
How's it going?
Thank you. It's going
good. I mean,
well.
John has his own apparel brand. I mean, how much better can it go?
But we've had a lot of really big gets. We've had Shaquille O'Neal. We've had Jimmy Pitaro.
Yeah.
My daughters, when they heard that you were coming on, they know you from Dancing with the Stars, and you've gotten out. That they're very impressed with me right now. You're more famous a lot of times than the people that you interview. And that's something that you sort of grew into. How has that changed how you approach your interviews on camera?
I think what's changed me a lot in interviewing players and coaches is A, marrying one, knowing you have a family at home, and B, becoming close with these guys and developing these relationships. You start to realize that they're more than just a piece of meat. And I'm saying that in terms of, my husband would throw that around if a guy was hurt and it's like, well, why is he getting cut or scratched? And he's like, babe, at the end of it, you're just a piece of meat. I mean, it's part of the business. A lot of these guys I learned early, you have families, you have shit going on at home, as we've heard, early this year. They have lives too. And I do too. I mean, I was thinking about the last time we did a Packers Dallas game. I had just had massive surgery for cancer and no one knew. My husband and he was my boyfriend at the time. My dad and my husband were on the sidelines because they knew I shouldn't have been on my feet, but there was no way in hell I was missing Dak's rookie year at Green Bay, and Brett Favre's name was going in the ring at Lambeau. I didn't give a shit. I had just had surgery on a Tuesday. So you realize people have stuff at home. And I think that's kind of what has helped me so much. I remember, and I don't even remember why I'm saying this, but Tony Romo, I worked one of his games that he broke his collarbone, one of the many. And I remember Dallas's PR had not confirmed that had happened, but we had the video where he said to the trainer, it's broken. I know Candace Romo. I also know what it's like to be a wife and watch your husband get picked up off the ground. And I just remember saying to Z, I do not want to report this until she is told. So things like that, you treat them like human beings. A lot of times you get on calls with these guys. I've openly had fertility struggles. I know a lot of these guys are going through shit with their wives and their families and their kids and trying to have kids. A lot of times guys talk to me about it. Hey, my wife really appreciated you coming out and talking about IVF and things like that. You just peel back the curtain a little bit and know that they're really people, not just superstars. I also remember Thursday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes dislocating his knee on the field, and I've got to get Andy right then and there. And there was just a part of me that didn't want to be like, what do you do? But I know I had to. And I just said, oh, Andy, I am so sorry. And Andy said, he's going to be okay. And there you go. How do you know he's going to be okay? Because they were able to get it back in. What happens now? So I almost feel like sometimes being a real person and not just 3rd and 4, what were you thinking? Who are you throwing to there? Did the guy run a wrong route? You kind of get more out of them sometimes. And I think it's almost a relief for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I try to be a real. John is also like that. No, in all sincerity, though, I do think there's a human element, especially it's a relationship business, right? Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the day, you have to be able to go and talk to these people the following week and the week after, and those relationships are going to keep going. And this is kind of a different vein, but in terms of just overall, if you look at your career, this is a two-parter. What is the thing you're most proud of?
I'm most proud of the fact, and I always get really choked up about this, that just the respect, right? From I can listen, no offense, to what you guys write about me, and it can ruin my night. And I can listen to what people write on blogs. I came up in the age where the blogs were the thing, the dead spins, the big leads, the awful announcing, and that would ruin your day, you know, and then what people say on Twitter. But when I was awarded the Pat Summerall Award this past year, and they did a video tribute, and the three guys that spoke were Brady, Rodgers, and Manning, and I bawled. Having just those three guys to take time out of their day to say something about me, that's all I've ever wanted. I want the respect of those guys, all the players, the general managers, the coaches. You just don't want people to think you're there because I'm on TV and I get to talk to a 6'5" guy. That's not what this is about, you know? And I sat down with one of our executives the other day, and I was just talking about the NFL and how much I love it. And he just said, it's so refreshing for me to hear that, you know, doing a post-game interview means so much to you. Doing these sit-down interviews means so much to you, because they do. I love it so much. And I cherish the relationships and the respect that I've gained.
And then if there's one do-over you could have in your career, what would that be?
Turner Sports, man, I was terrible. The Sherman thing always sticks out to me.
Richard, let me ask you the final play. Take me through it.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get. Don't you ever talk about me.
Who was talking about you?
Crabtree, don't you open your mouth about the best. Or I'm going to shut it for you real quick. L.O.B.
All right, and Joe, back over to you.
The Sherman one, because I wish I just hadn't had that look on my face, but obviously it was one of the biggest post-game interviews I've ever had in my career. I think
just to refresh, because not everyone's probably just like the Michael Crabtree.
Yeah. What have you been under a rock? No, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean,
joking.
I guess it might not be, but that's the Michael Crabtree when he just ripped Michael Crabtree to pieces, and then what did your look was what? And I can't recall what your look was.
Well, my look was just, I remember when it happened.
And do that again, Erin?
Yeah, oh my God, right? That's an everyday look for me. But I remember when it happened, and I just thought to myself, this is awesome, because no athlete, behaves like this. You don't get the raw emotion like this ever. Most guys are just like, I want to, we took it play by play. It was our style of ball. It was just cool. It was real. It was great. So I really appreciated that, but I wish I hadn't looked like such an amateur. And I turned into, and I've told this many times, because I knew it was so cool, and because I'm such a sports fan, and I just was like, holy shit, and my follow-up better be good, because this is going to be everywhere. I turned into like a 5-year-old, and it was like, who was talking about you? And I should have been, who was talking? Who are you talking about? Because I knew who he was, but it was just like my composure. And I just turned into like a super fan at that moment. And that was really stupid. I think too, and what I try to tell, women that want to get into this industry, or even men, is just, it's not that I didn't prep before, and I did. I was psycho about it. I prep more now than I ever did in college, which I know annoys my parents a bit. Maybe the way I prepped, I think I've kind of got it to a great kind of formula now. But listen, you learn as you go, right? You guys don't do the things that you did when you were younger, but yeah. So I don't know. I'm learning now more than ever to kind of sit back and enjoy the moments. 4th and 10. We're watching Rodgers as their season is they're on their way to losing their 5th straight. I'm watching him, try to march them down the field, and I'm like, this is awesome. This is why you're here. Brady the other night, Mahomes. I'm just trying to learn to enjoy these a little bit more and not be so hard on myself and stressed out.
We have video with this pod, but it's mostly audio people listening. So the look that Erin gave a little bit ago, I described it as like the wide-eyed, like emoji look. That's what I would go with.
The look that I give whenever I hear Andrew ask a question, basically.
Oh yeah, sure.
So you mentioned the Pat Summerall Award. You mentioned that Brady was one of the guys that gave went on camera and said nice things about you. How stoked are you to work with Tom Brady next year?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously when the news came out, everybody was like, wow, it seems like we never really know what he's up to come the off season. I feel like we are in week 10. I am trying so hard not to get this flu, knock on wood, that everybody's getting. And we've got a huge matchup this weekend. I'm going to give you one of these generic answers that athletes give me all the time. And I'm just taking it game by game, and we're just worrying about us. You have no idea what's going to happen in the future. So, yeah, I'm just worried about it.
Erin just gave us the game. I'll take a game by game.
Game by game. We got to.
We're on to Dallas, Green Bay.
But let me ask you this though: when you guys have had meetings with Brady, I mean, I'm sure it's come up with you, Greg, and Kevin in terms of when you're talking. You've had a few Brady games where you're kind of like, from what I've heard, Greg's been pretty cool about it because it is kind of that could be awkward, right? With Brady in some regards, kind of slated to take his job. And I think, like I've written and said, I think this could work out very well for Greg, regardless of Tom, what he does in terms of the future. He's only, mid to late 30s. But like, how has that been?
He's so young, by the way. Gosh, Greg Olsen makes me feel so old. They're both such professionals. Also, I don't know how much time you've spent with Olsen. He's freaking hilarious. There are many times I'm like, I need you to stop. I have a full bladder. I don't, need to wet my pants in the middle of an airport right now. The guy is so funny and so much fun. Loves to crush a dinner too before games, pregame, the night before. So we enjoy that. They've been awesome. They've been nothing but funny and talking about, honestly, where our conversations have gone is, Greg saying, or Tom saying, well, hey, I tried to get you to come play with me, but, you didn't want to. So we're like, whoa, you never told us that. So it's really been stuff like that.
Erin, you're one of the most plugged in NFL reporters. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. You have to give an answer.
Oh, no.
I know what this question is. If you get this answer correct, Erin, because I saw this on. If this is the question, that's the last question here. I was going to be like,
it's going to make me look so dumb.
No, you're not. I love this question because John. This is John. This is John's brand. This is John's brand. Go for it,
Sunday
John.
Ticket. Where's it going next year?
Oh, so what did you just say? Sunday Ticket?
Yeah, where's it going to go next year?
I have no clue.
Here's
the other thing. You want to know something? I don't know anything about Sunday Ticket. I don't get to watch it. I don't understand what fans are talking about when they experience it. No offense to Sunday Ticket, but I'm on a field and then I'm back on, a plane watching the game on my phone. So I have no idea. Where do you guys want to see it go?
Well, let's just do this.
Andrew, I got to say, in that answer, I heard Apple. That's what I heard in that answer. What did you hear?
Well, no, I was going to give her three choices. I was going to give her Apple, Amazon, or Tubi. Which one do you think?
Tubi. I'll say Tubi because it helps Fox, right?
There you go. Yeah. There's no chance for Tubi. I threw that one in there. Erin, this has been great. Any last advice for John's apparel brand?
Well, okay, so yeah, I do. What do you want the overall theme to be? Who are you trying to cater to?
A little urban chic, maybe,
Okay. Who do you want your audience to be?
My audience is my wife of 30 years.
Okay.
That's it. That's my only audience.
Would you like direct to consumer, or are you thinking brick and mortar?
Oh, brick and mortar. Yeah, that totally brick and mortar.
I don't know if that's the right idea right now. I'll go offline. I'll talk to you about brick and mortar, direct to consumer. If you're looking at the Kardashian model, that's what they've done. And it really seems to work for them. So John, as you would understand, goal is here, big jet, like the Kardashians, out of Green Bay, all the things.
It actually all does. I mean, we don't have to go too much further, but it actually does all come to what we talk about a lot with direct to consumer as compared to the brick and mortar. I'm not sure. I think, look, if I'm putting money down on, the Wear by EA brand or the Ourand by JO brand, I think I'll go EA. I don't
know. Urban chic, I can get on board. I can get on board with urban chic.
Well, Erin, thank you very much for taking the time, being the big get this week. Million things going on all the time between Sundays, the podcast with Carissa Thompson, and then your own, clothing line. And we appreciate you giving us time here on the podcast.
Hey, coaches are changing the way they run during their halftime interviews because of my Calm Down podcast. Kyle Shanahan got the memo and he walked with me. Normally he's a sprinter and I almost fell. I ran into Trent Williams. I barely got anything or forgot what he told me because I was ducking people. Talked about it on the Calm Down podcast. San Francisco Rams game. He looked at me and he goes, I will walk. And I was like, you don't have to. I'm ready to record you. So calm down.
There you go.
Taking the world by storm,
Good work. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erin.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, you mentioned this, like the lost years. Turner, I think I looked on our wiki before the interview. I don't think it was even on the wiki, was it?
Yeah, you can't trust Wiki necessarily, but yeah, I did not know about that. I really am a sports media dork. Like, I know more about certain people's careers than I do like friends and family's birthdays. And so I don't know where that came from. The Erin Andrews. I gotta like see if I can find some video of her doing some sideline. She had some good stories there, but that was real good. A lot of fun stories, a lot of good insight from Erin Andrews. So we appreciate that.
Let's go right into our call of the week.
Call of the week.
Andrew, you've been tweeting about this one. I thought it was fantastic at the time. I'll let you do the intro on it.
All right, Game 3 of the World Series back in Philadelphia. Joe Davis, John Smoltz on the call. Fox, listen, we can't even, if you're listening audio wise, you got to go to my Twitter and maybe scroll down, but because you need the video as well to really give it its justice. But this was probably the best TV of the year that I've seen. Let's take a listen.
I'll be kind of shocked if Bryce is not going to the plate sitting on a breaking ball. At some point, McCullers has to throw him fastballs to keep him honest. But Bryce is so good against off speed, and we know he likes to swing early and swing big. If he stays on the breaking ball and gets the one in the middle of the plate, loud noise.
So you mentioned at some point he's got to throw him a fastball. He doesn't want to. He's only thrown one fastball to a left-hander all postseason. Does he change that up against this guy here? 2 gone and has scored his first inning. McCullers to Harper. It's good. Right center field. Lightning strikes. 2-0 Phils.
Yeah, you're so right about the video, because it was everything about the production. It started on Harper. Smoltz was on point. Davis had a good call. Most importantly, they got so lucky. I mean, that happened to be a first pitch. Harper just nails it. I mean, a lot of luck also goes into some of these best calls, right?
100%. You do the right thing 50 times, 48, 49 of the times. Bryce Harper hits a single, pops out, strikes out, and you get no payoff. And so nobody notices, but you have to do it. They probably would have done the exact same thing 50 times. And then Bryce Harper came through, so it made it a magic moment. Phillies couldn't finish the series. It was kind of Bryce Harper that Houston took him out of the series after that. But that was tremendous from Fox Sports, and it's really good TV. And you could hear it a little bit there, but if we let it play out, they let the pictures tell the story after a good call by Davis, and then let the pictures tell the story. And so good producing, good directing there by Fox. So that's going to do it. I want to thank Erin Andrews, our big get. As always, our producers, AC Wyatt and Chris Mason, who put everything together.
Andrew, before we go, I got to give one shout out. It's to Doc Lou, Iowa. He commented on our Apple page. He was the one who mentioned that you say irregardless, which is not a word. And I know why I like Doc Lou. He's originally from Baltimore. So
yeah, there you go, Doc. I noticed that. We discussed it, and you're right. I used irregardless a few episodes ago. Haven't used it. It's coming to my brain. And I said, nope, Doc set me straight. So we appreciate him and all our listeners.
Thanks for listening, everyone.